Even the Rich is a podcast from Wondery that tells the jaw-dropping stories about the tumultuous lives of the world's elite, from the greatest family dynasties to pop culture superstars.
Listen to Even the Rich on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app.
I'm Indy Neidell.
And I'm Berns.
And this is the Baseball History Time Machine,
where we waste your brain capacity on things that much of the world might consider useless information, but we know is absolutely vital.
Vital for the continuation of the human race, Berns. We could not carry on without it.
This is true. And what in the world are we talking about today?
Well, after 5 episodes and 10 weeks of it, we are not talking about sluggers of the 1940s.
I'm going to miss them.
It was a fun series to do. And this episode is the first in what is likely a series, but not one that has to come like that in straight episodes.
What do you mean?
Like, we can add an episode to this series every now and then, is what I'm thinking.
Okay, I see. And what is this series then?
It is an episode and a series on Unbreakable Records, or perhaps not unbreakable, but least likely to be broken.
Okay.
But there are some that, because of the way the game has changed physically and mechanically, it seems literally impossible to break.
And I'm guessing you're going to name one of those to get the ball rolling?
I sure am, but first, I'm going to tell all the good people out there they should be good souls and support us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and look up Indy Neidell's Baseball History Time Machine. You'll get the episodes a day or 3 early if you join at the lowest and so far only membership tier. But we're thinking about another membership tier with proper transcripts of our episodes that you can easily use in your own research. But above all, you'll be helping us out and making it easier for us to make time to do this.
And remember to send loads of emails or mail to your local newspaper sports section so that they can either mention us or maybe pick us up, perhaps.
It would be really cool to be associated with a large, like, American newspaper. And I do have one more announcement. Actually, 1.5 more announcements. The one is, I was a guest the other day on the podcast Badass of the Week, where I talked about Ted Williams and his career and his military service.
And he really was a badass.
He really was, and it's also a really good podcast, and it's been around for a while, and I've talked to them for a couple of years about doing something, since, I'm known as a military historian, doing something about World War II or Korea, and Ted Williams seemed to work. But if you look through their canon of material, there's a lot of really good episodes.
Badass of the Week.
And it is available at most platforms, just like us. And now the half announcement is, we are recording this on Friday, October 31st, and it's coming out on the Sunday. So people are not going to get it 3 days early because I'm going to edit it tomorrow. And for the first time in the entire series, I am mildly drunk while we're recording this because I've just been giving out candy to trick-or-treaters for a few hours, and there were drinks involved. Not for the trick-or-treaters. And now, Berns, an unbreakable record for you. Jim Devlin set this record in 1877.
Okay.
And I find it hard to believe that anyone will break this record anytime soon.
Okay, what was it?
Jim Devlin was the pitcher for the Louisville Grays that year. Louisville was in the National League. He was the pitcher. When I said the pitcher and not a pitcher.
Yeah.
It's because he was the only pitcher for them that season. The Grays played 61 games. They went 35-25 with 1 tie. Jim Devlin started all 61 games for them and completed all 61 games for them, never being relieved. So no one other than Jim Devlin threw a single pitch for Louisville in 1877. Now, in order to match that feat, someone would have to do something similar. And of course, now seasons are a bit different. But in order to break that record, you would have to do it for 2 seasons.
Yeah, that sounds pretty unbreakable. It's
funny enough,
almost impossible.
Devlin himself, looking back, almost did that.
In 1878?
No, the other way around. In 1876, the Grays played 69 games, and Devlin started 68 of them and completed 66 of those.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
It really is. And he actually pitched more innings in 1876 than 1877. Jeez. I mean, it was a ton anyhow. It was 622 and then 559 innings.
But I mean, you've mentioned some of the all-time innings pitch leaders before, and am I right that 622 is not the all-time high, correct?
That is correct. Will White in 1879 pitched 680 innings for Cincinnati.
Yeah, this boggles the mind. Like, could he even pitch after that? Could he even raise his arm after that? Like, how do you scratch your ear? How do you do anything?
Will White had a really good career for a 19th century pitcher. And you are right that many of them only lasted for a couple seasons because of arm overuse.
Yeah, exactly.
In 1879, when White set the record, he made 76 starts and completed 75 games. Cincinnati, though, played 81 games that year.
Okay, so he missed 6 games. What a softie.
What a softie. But those are still the single-season records for games started and complete games. And White went 43-31 with a 1.99 ERA. And you might think, if you look at his next 2 seasons, that it affected his arm. In 1880, he had 18 wins, but a league-leading 42 losses in, these are air quotes, only 517 innings pitched, though he had a 2.14 ERA. Then in 1881, he appeared in just 2 games and lost them both.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like career over, right?
But it was not. See, in 1880, the 18 wins and 42 losses record was because the team sucked, not White. And since a shitty team had terrible attendance, to make some cash, Cincinnati started selling beer at games and renting the field out to semi-pro teams on Sundays. The National League did not have Sunday games, nor did they allow beer being sold on the premises. So when National League President William Hulbert told them to stop, and they didn't, Cincinnati was thrown out of the league. So after 1880, White was without an employer. The 2 games in 1881 were with Detroit in May. And since he didn't pitch for them after that, maybe he had a sore arm that year. I don't know. But he came back in 1882 in the first season of the American Association as a major league, again with Cincinnati, now proudly selling beer, right, and playing on Sundays. And he had a league-leading 40 wins against just 12 losses.
Oh, wow.
1.54 ERA.
Jeez.
And a league-leading 8 shutouts. Now, here is something funny about the ups and downs of innings pitched back then, right? He pitched 52 complete games and 480 innings, which both led the league. But the next year, he had 64 complete games and 577 innings pitched, and neither of those led the league.
Okay, my brain is hurting trying to comprehend those numbers. My arm hurts.
It's just thinking about that, thinking about standing there on the mound for 75 games.
That's insane. That blows my mind.
Will White was a very unique pitcher. He was the last player for many decades to wear glasses, actually. He was one of the few players that wore glasses. And he had 6 seasons of over 400 innings pitched in only 7 full seasons as a pitcher. Here's something else. He was the first, as far as I'm aware, the first notorious headhunter.
Really?
1884 and 1885 are the first seasons we have hit by pitch data, when batters were hit by pitches, because that's when a batter was first awarded a base for being hit.
Okay.
And White led the league with 35 and then 27. And the second time, 27 hit batsmen in only 293 innings pitched. And we don't know how many he hit in his career before that, but we know he led the league in wild pitches in 1878, 79, and 80 with 40, 49, and 35. And how much you want to bet a lot of those were either hit batters or of the very, very far inside pitch variety?
It seems pretty likely.
Now, Will White's brother is actually more well-known than Will is today. His brother is Hall of Famer Deacon White.
Oh, that's cool.
It was elder brother Deacon that got Will his first major league tryout, which he aced. Now, White apparently wasn't just the last major leaguer of the 19th century to wear glasses when he pitched. He also was the first.
That's a pretty killer trivia question.
First major league, and first star. He was a big star.
First star to wear glasses.
And there must have been, from things I've read, there must have been minor leaguers or someone else wearing glasses, since Dan Bruthers, the big star, is quoted, and I wrote this down, is quoted as saying this: Will White was, I suppose, the last of the eyeglassed professionals. Nearsighted as Roosevelt, and Teddy could play a good game of ball, I'll bet, White was nevertheless a great pitcher. He had the curves, the speed, and all sorts of scientific trickery. And hey, here is another trivia question and answer.
Lay it on me.
Okay, I will right after this. Devlin's tryout was a 3-game tryout with Boston, and with Will White pitching and Deacon White catching, they became the first brothers battery combination in Major League Baseball. And White also did one of the first demonstrations to show that a curveball actually curved, because people think, you can't physically do that, using 3 posts set up in a line in 1879. Now, Opie Kaler, who I'm not going to introduce him, but we'll talk about him when we talk about the American Association. But at the time, he was a Cincinnati sport writer. He wrote this: White stood upon the left of the fence at one end, so his hand could not possibly pass beyond the straight line, and pitched the ball so it passed to the right of the middle post. This it did by 3 or 4 inches, but curved so much that it passed the third post 1.5 feet to the left.
But how was Cincinnati stacked in 1882? I mean, a new league is like an expansion season, right? Yeah. So was the talent somewhat diluted?
Well, with the new major league, whenever that's happened with the AL or the Federal League, yeah, it can't help but be to a certain degree. But it wasn't just the AA. They rated National League teams for talent, and they had money.
Okay.
So other than young Bid McPhee, Cincinnati's rookie second baseman, the entire roster of Cincinnati was former National Leaguers. And they ran away with the pennant, and they actually had a postseason series versus Chicago, who won the National League pennant.
So basically a World Series.
Well, sort of. I mean, all the sources do call this an exhibition, and unlike those earlier World Series, this may well have been, because it was only a 2-game series. It wasn't a best of 3 or best of 5 or best of 7 or something. Although it did serve to give the AA legitimacy just by playing, right? Mm-hmm. And the teams won 1 game each, which also helped that. And White shut out the National League. Chicago had won 3 pennants in a row, and he shut them out 4-0 in game 1.
Wow.
He pitched and lost game 2, and I have looked, and I do not know the score of that game.
Okay, but hold on. Can I actually point out that you've barely said anything about Jim Devlin, the guy who actually set the Unbreakable record?
But that's how things work on this podcast.
For those of you who do not know,
I'll say I'm going to talk about this thing, and then I spend 10 minutes talking about something completely unrelated. So
if you're new here,
thank you for mentioning that. I will leave Will White by saying that he ran a tea house during the off seasons, and after baseball he became an optician.
What a rough and tumble life.
Indeed, just like those earlier fight at a drop of a hat baseball players, tea houses and opticians. That's a good name for a 60s psychedelic album.
Actually, that could work.
Tea houses and opticians. It would be like the Small Faces or the Zombies, like psychedelic album. Okay, so back to Jim Devlin.
Yes.
And pitching every single inning for his team in 1877. Now, he threw a sinker, by the way, and as far as I know, he was the first guy to do that.
Okay,
right?
That's interesting. But how did he do in 1878? Did he come close to repeating his feat at all?
He did not. In fact, he did not throw a single pitch that year or ever again in professional baseball because he was banned from baseball for life after the 1877 season.
Why?
Well, just after 1877 came the first major league gambling scandal. It exploded, right? Okay. And Jim Devlin was at the heart of it.
Okay, I guess this is where I sit back and I let you tell me about it, because this sounds wild.
I guess this is where I do that. Okay, pull up a chair, Berns. Let me spin your yarn. Now, many players in the years of the National Association, 1871 to 75, had been suspected of throwing games for money or working with gamblers in general. And one of the reasons the National League was formed was to get gambling out of the game. And the National League had much more oversight and much more standardization. We'll talk about it one day. But anyhow, Devlin and the Grays were a really good team in 1877. And in mid-August, they were in first place by 4 games with like 20 games left to play. But then over the next 9 games, they lost 8 of them and had 1 tie, which put them 5 games out of first place behind Boston, who won 20 of their final 21 games to win the pennant. Louisville did have a 6-game winning streak near the end of the season, but it came after Boston had already clinched the title.
I mean, that's not necessarily suspicious. I mean, I look at the Phillies in 1964, 6 games in first place with 10 left to play, and they blew it.
Any Philadelphia fans out there, you must remember. I know. That's like that. When I think of a choke, that's the choke.
All-time choke.
10 games to play. You're 6 games in first place.
You just have to win. Like
they lost all 10. I think they won actually the very last game, but St. Louis had already won the event. And it wasn't like St. Louis went 10-0. St. Louis went like 7-3 or something like that. Suspicions were first raised already August 16th, playing against Boston, when Bill Craver, took a called third strike with the tying runs on base, and Devlin struck out 4 times that game.
Was he a good hitter?
He was a good hitter, actually, and he was exceptionally good for a pitcher, hitting .287 lifetime.
Oh.
And remember, he played so often, he's getting as many at-bats per season as a regular position player. You know, the first baseman has the same number of at-bats as Devlin.
Yeah.
And .287 lifetime, that's good in any era.
Pretty good.
So those 4 strikeouts that game were more than a seventh of his season total of 27, which is a bit sketchy. But so the season ends.
Okay.
And certain Grays players are then spotted eating at fancy restaurants night after night and wearing fancy clothes and diamond pins and diamond rings. So John Halderman, who's not only a writer for the Louisville Courier-Journal, but is the son of the team's president and plays with the Grays sometimes during exhibition games, he starts poking around and he finds out that Al Nichols, who's just a utility infielder and, well, not a very good one, received an unusually large number of telegrams in August and September.
Not fan mail. Definitely not fan mail.
You know, could be, but he's not that good.
No, exactly.
So Halderman accuses the Grays of throwing games. And this causes team vice president Charles Chase to launch an investigation. Chase, it turns out, received telegrams himself informing him that some of his players were throwing games, but he ignored them. He didn't believe them. He thought this was just, you know...
hate mail, basically, yeah.
So Chase demands that his players show them their papers, their telegrams. You know, you kept your telegrams. That's your correspondence.
Yeah, of course.
You didn't have phones.
It's records.
But you didn't have your phones. You know,
Yeah.
And all of the players on the team show him their telegrams, except for Craver, who refuses. And I should point out that Craver, who was the shortstop, he already had a bad reputation for gambling stuff from the National Association, so he's just presumed guilty.
Of course.
But the other guy's telegrams, some of the other guy's telegrams, confirm that Nichols was coordinating game outcomes with gamblers. And Devlin, George Hall, Bill Craver, and Al Nichols are all fingered. Chase confronts Devlin and Hall. Now, Hall, I should point out, was a huge star.
Okay.
Hall was like Freddie Freeman. He was a huge star.
Okay.
He finished second in the league that year in most hitting categories behind megastar Ross Barnes. Ross Barnes would be like the Aaron Judge, and George Hall would be like the Freddie Freeman.
The Freddie Freeman.
Yeah. And, well, Chase confronts Devlin and Hall, and they admit they took money to throw some exhibition games late in the season, but, you know, not real games.
Never. They would never do that.
No.
Do you know how much they got for throwing these, in air quotes, exhibition games?
Devlin said he got $100 for each game, which is pretty serious money then when... You know, you could $1,000 a year was a pretty good baseball salary. But Chase keeps up the pressure, and Devlin finally breaks, and he says, yes, he took money from gamblers to throw road games in August and tank the season. And he also gives up Nichols and Craver in addition to Hall. Devlin blames the Louisville owners for all this, and not just the gamblers. The owners were not willing to pay an honest wage, according to him, and so he was driven into the arms of the gamblers by cheapskate owners.
How much was he getting paid back then?
Apparently, and this I got from baseballreference.com, Devlin got $2,000 for the season.
That's not terrible.
No, and that's more than most people even late in the 1880s. In the 1880s,
exactly.
Well, the 4 are thrown off the club, and then Hulbert, to make a stand against gambling, on December 4th, bans them from professional baseball for life. Wow. Craver is outraged since nothing's been proven against him, right? Just hearsay. And he appeals, as does Devlin each year, but to no avail.
Wow, what happened to them then?
Funnily enough, this is actually quite ironic. Both Devlin and Craver became cops.
Yeah, all right.
Well, you know, Nichols was able to play some semi-pro, baseball, pickup games here and there. And Hall worked as an engraver. Hall had a .323 career batting average. Dude, so who knows what could have been for him and Devlin. Devlin died already in 1883 of tuberculosis, but his 190 career ERA is third all time still today.
See, that's actually really, really sad. But how stupid it is to go around flashing all that money just days after you got there for throwing games, Well,
no one said baseball players are necessarily smart.
Yeah, this is true, but...
Okay, I get it. I would like... It's like if you ever watch like Goodfellas, after they're doing, people like don't flash any money around, but even after a couple months, people are flashing money around.
No, you shouldn't be doing the whole
thing.
You can never basically flash money around if you're going to do that kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. So that's one pretty unbreakable record because, as you said, to beat that, you'd have to pitch every inning of every game for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
What's another one?
I will throw out another one in a similar vein. Johnny Vandermeer's 2 consecutive no-hitters. Because to beat that one, you would have to throw 3 no-hitters in a row. And while it's not technically impossible like Devlin's record is today, it's extremely unlikely.
So just a side note here, that surname, Vandermeer, is very close to my surname.
I know.
And there's a lot of, at least from my dad's side, he has claimed, and I think there's probably some substance to this, but a lot of like the people who have my surname that moved to America changed it to Vandermeer because it was just easier to say.
We should dig around.
We should dig around because my dad has mentioned it like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
It might have been a little bit tongue in cheek, but there might be some truth to it,
Well, they threw 2 no-hitters in a row, and somebody would have to throw 3 in a row in order to beat his record.
How many guys have thrown 3 in a career then?
Nolan Ryan threw 7,
okay.
Sandy Koufax 4, and Larry Corcoran, Cy Young, Bob Feller, and Justin Verlander each have 3.
Larry Corcoran, never heard of him actually.
And he pitched for Chicago.
Was he a Cub?
Okay, he wasn't really a Cub. He pitched way before that when they were called just either the White Stockings or the Chicagos.
Okay.
Corcoran pitched 5 full seasons from 1880 to 1884.
Okay, and he still had 3 no-hitters.
In the 5 seasons.
That's insane.
And he was a little guy. He was 5'3" and 127 pounds, which, if you happen to be one of our metrically inclined fans, is 160 centimeters and just 58 kilos.
Geez, that's pretty small. That's a lot smaller than Altuve even.
Well, certainly in weight, but definitely in height. And after 5 years of hard work, his arm was burned out, the usual story.
Yeah, classic.
But for those 5 seasons, he averaged over 450 innings pitched and nearly 35 wins a season. Now, I read something pretty interesting in his Sabre bio. In the 1870s, he and future Major League pitcher Terry Larkin and future Hall of Fame pitcher Mickey Welch would gather together, according to pitcher Bennett Wilson, quote, in a big backyard almost every day, and used a clothesline horse, which was used by an old widow on which to dry her washing, with which to gain control of the various curves. The horizontal bar across the horse was supposed to represent the height of a batter's waist, and the ball was curved around the main sticks. This afforded an effective means of practice, end quote.
Yeah, you can't see this, but I'm sitting here trying to ponder and picture how this would look.
I've read that quote several times, and I know what a closed horse looks like because I'm old enough, and I still can't picture how this would actually work.
No.
But he seems pretty certain, and it obviously worked. And funny enough, Larkin pitched for Chicago. It started for Chicago in the late 1870s, but when his arm went sore, Corcoran got his chance and actually replaced Larkin. And in 1880, he and Fred Goldsmith were used by Cap Anson as the first proper pitching rotation, 2-man rotation, though Corcoran threw way more innings. And Corcoran was tough to hit. And in August, he threw a 2-hitter, a 1-hitter, and a no-hitter. He added another no-hitter in 1882, another one in 1884. That last one, 10 days after he had alternated pitching with his right and left hands in the same game because he had a sore on his right index finger, so it was hard to pitch a lot of pitches with it. Okay, this was unsuccessful, and he was taken out of the game after 4 innings.
People should pull stunts like this more often these days.
Well, he didn't have a glove, but I love that he thought he was actually good enough.
Yeah.
Other hand.
I mean, that's like confidence,
Well, in 1885, it was obvious his arm was shot.
Yeah.
But a couple years later, he did try a comeback as just a lefty, and he started in the minors, and he actually made it back to the major leagues for 2 games with Indianapolis, who had a National League team then. But he lasted just 2 games there, giving up 23 hits and 19 walks in 15 innings. So, well, by this time, he had serious issues with alcohol, which did not improve once he was away from baseball. And he died penniless in 1891 of nephritis.
What is nephritis?
It is an inflammation of the kidneys, which, by the way, is today the 9th most common cause of death among women in the United States.
The things you learn here.
The things you learn here.
And what does that have to do with Johnny Vandermeer?
That's true. That's like a Will White like scale sidetrack. That's pretty funny. Johnny Vandermeer. Vandermeer exploded onto the national scene with his 2 straight hitters, which happened in, and I'm pretty sure, only the 19th and 20th starts of his career.
That's pretty impressive.
And you got to think what people might expect from you for the rest of your career.
Was it a big problem for Johnny?
For the Dutch Master.
That's a brilliant nickname.
Come on, these
I
guys.
love that.
The Dutch Master.
That's pretty close to the Flying Dutchman as well.
Honus Wagner.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't think it was a real issue for him because I haven't actually read anywhere that it was. But his no-hit inning streak was actually 21 2/3 innings, which was not the record. Cy Young pitched 24 straight no-hit innings back in 1904.
Dude, 24 straight no-hit innings, but not 2 no-hitters?
No, because Young did it over several games.
Okay.
In late April, he gave up no hits in the last 2 innings of a loss, right?
Okay.
The 8th and 9th inning, right? Then 5 days later, he came in and threw 7 hitless relief innings, relieving someone else.
Okay.
Then 5 days after that, he threw the first perfect game in AL history, and that's, 9 more. And then 6 days later, he was throwing another no-hitter until Sam Crawford doubled in the 7th inning. So you add that all together. You get something.
Okay.
Young did stay in that game and pitched 15 innings and won 1-0.
I mean, that guy should have a pitching award named after him.
Well, like for the best pitcher in each league or something.
Yeah, actually. I actually like that. That's a great idea.
I think I mentioned it in another episode, but Vandermeer's second no-hitter was on the road in Brooklyn and was the first night game ever played at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And to make it even more special, he had loads of fans from New Jersey who'd come to see him pitch because that's where he was from, and it's easy to get from New Jersey to Brooklyn.
Has anyone come real close to at least equaling Vandermeer?
I will tell you right after this.
Oh.
The closest anyone has come to throwing 2 straight no-hitters after Johnny Vandermeer that I am aware of, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, is Ewell Blackwell, who threw 1 no-hitter in 1947, and then his next start was working on another no-hitter when Eddie Stanky singled in the 9th inning.
Close. What was his name again?
Ewell Blackwell, and they called him the Whip.
I'm going to ask, how come?
Because of his sidearm delivery, and I'm guessing you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
When I was a kid in the 70s, you'd still every now and then see it on like one of the Sports Sunday and Sports Saturday.
Okay.
It was just a side. It's a whip. It's just his body goes forward and the arm comes out.
Crazy.
Blackwell, though, he was a teammate of Vandermeer at the time.
Okay.
And he had a hell of a year for the Reds. He went 22-9, led the league in strikeouts, finished second in the MVP race. And his first full season was 1946, and he reeled off 6 straight All-Star appearances.
Was Vandermeer ever an All-Star?
He was an All-Star 4 times. After his double no-hitters, though, he struggled with control in 1939, 1940. Even went down to the minor leagues at one point. But in 41, 42, and 43, he came back to lead the National League in strikeouts each year.
Nice.
1948 was his last solid Major League season, but he pitched in the minors until 1955 when he was 40 years old in Class D ball, which is, you gotta like baseball.
Yeah.
I should point out, though, that despite his occasional heroics, Johnny Vandermeer retired with a lifetime losing record.
You wouldn't have guessed that.
You would not have guessed, but now, since time is escaping us, I'm going to move on to a hitting record.
Great.
One of my favorite records, and one which is theoretically possible to break, but extremely unlikely. Chief Wilson's 36 triples in 1912.
I thought you were not supposed to call Native Americans chief anymore.
You're not supposed to, but Chief Wilson, or Owen Wilson, was not Native American.
The plot thickens. Then why was he called chief?
Owen Wilson was from Texas, like me, but unlike me, grew up on his family ranch north of Austin.
Right.
In 1907, in the minors with Des Moines in the Western League, he hit .323, and it turned out he had a world-class, all-time best cannon for an outfield arm. So when good old Babe Adams, remember him, the league's best pitcher, when he moved up to join the Pirates in the major leagues at the end of the year, he recommended Wilson to Pittsburgh owner Barney Dreyfuss. So Tex Wilson did get picked up, because he was Tex then, and he got the new nickname Chief just before the 1908 season, and here's how.
Okay.
Pirates manager Fred Clark held a big party at his own ranch in Kansas before the season, and Wilson showed off his abilities with a lariat, with a lasso and a lariat.
Yeah.
And Clark said he looked just like the chief of the Texas Rangers, and it stuck, and that's why he's Chief Wilson.
That's a cool way to get a cool nickname.
Chief Wilson's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty
cool. Now, Wilson as a rookie played 144 games for the Pirates, but he was one of the worst hitters in the league that year, hitting .227, that's it, with only 18 extra base hits. And the Pirates almost won the pennant. Wilson got a lot of boos, but just the fact that he was still an everyday player says a lot about his throwing arm and his fielding.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, for his 9-year career, he led the league in right field fielding percentage 5 times, putouts 4 times, double plays twice, averaged 20 assists per season, and the 30 outfield assists he had in 1914 is still 5th all time.
So yes, a very good fielder.
Yeah, he was a very good fielder. So in 1909, the Pirates did win the pennant and then won the World Series with Babe Adams as a star, as we've seen. I love Babe Adams.
Yeah, Babe Adams is he's a stud.
He's one of this podcast hero.
100%.
Yeah,
Babe Adams is a stud.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Wilson hit pretty okay that year. Hit 272, 22 doubles, 12 triples. So he's getting somewhere. Now, 1911 was when he really found his groove. He hit an even 300, but this is the dead ball era, so that's good. Even 300 with 34 doubles, 12 triples, and 12 homers. Now, that was 5th in the league in doubles and 3rd in homers, because you didn't hit a lot of homers back then. And he led the league with 107 RBIs. And those 12 homers was actually the Pirates' franchise record at the time, which lasted until 1925.
And when did he have the triples record season?
The year after that, in 1912. Now, Berns, that year was a watershed year for triples in general.
Does one have watershed years for triples?
I said it, and as it was coming out of my mouth, I'm realizing that, but yes, you can have a watershed year for triples, and 1912 was a watershed year for triples. I'll tell you what, the National League hit 680 triples.
Oh.
And the 8-team National League, which is the most in National League history.
Okay.
And Forbes Field, where the Pirates played them, that might be the best park for triples in history, because they played 62 seasons there, and they led the National League in triples in 31 of them. It was so cavernous. The distance like a lot of things that might go over the fence in other
just
parks.
And
in 1912, even without Wilson's 36 triples, they still would have led the league, and he hit 24 of his 36 triples at home.
If he had hit one of those on the road, some of them would likely have been homers instead of triples, right?
If he'd hit some of his triples on the road.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, totally. You think, well, some of them, sure. But his triples record, that 36 triples in a season, that's not just the major leagues. It's the record for all levels of organized baseball. There's no minor league where someone...
Okay.
And his stat line that year was generally similar to 1911, and he hit an even 300 again.
That's really good.
And he hit one fewer homer. But his triples, which jumped from 12 to 36, he hit them in streaks. Like there was one stretch where he tripled in 5 straight games. And here's the thing. His last triple, number 36, came in the 9th inning of the last game of the season when he was thrown out at home trying to stretch a triple into an inside-the-park grand slam, but, he got credit for the triple.
But how does that work? How do you get credit for it for that hit when you're out?
How do you get credit for
for the triple?
Oh, because he was thrown out at home and he got credit
exactly.
for it. Well, that's a really good question because a lot of people don't know this.
That doesn't make sense.
The Major League Rulebook states a batter receives credit for a base hit if they reach first base successfully on a hit that lands anywhere in fair territory, in infield or outfield. Unless, there's not a force out ahead of them or it's an error.
Yes.
But once they get to first base, if they then choose to try and advance beyond first base, then they've become a runner. And anything that happens after that, even if it's part of the same play, is treated separately in the box score. It might not always make sense, but that's the way the rule is laid out. Let's say they just called him out, right?
Okay.
But he did hit a ball good enough to make a triple and got out at home. So
you can't negate his triple,
But why should he get penalized for that? And the pitcher has no penalty for giving that up. So, of course, once he makes first base, once he reaches first base, it's a hit. And anything that happens after... So the pitcher is penalized for giving up a hit.
Yeah, but that makes sense.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I score games, because I do score games sometimes, it can be tricky, and the other teams will sometimes wonder why certain things are credited as hits and other things are credited as outs.
What is the old triples record?
Dave Orr in 1886 and Heine Reitz in 1894 each had 31, so Wilson demolished the old record.
Yeah.
Now, many of Orr's, by the way, would have been home runs, but he was a very large, fat, slow gentleman. And he often apparently ran out of steam chugging into third base on what would have been homers. Incredible hitter, though. Can't fault him for that.
What a unit.
In his 7 full seasons, he never finished below 5th in the batting race. He hit .342 lifetime during a really bad hitter's era. Yeah. And his final season, 1890, he hit .371, the top mark of his career.
Jeez, dude, that's insane. I wonder if he's related to Bobby Orr, the great.
Well, that we'll have to look up ourselves.
We'll have to look that up. That'd be cool. Yeah. But why would you retire after that? I mean, looking at these numbers, if you are ending like on 371.
He had no choice. He had a career-ending stroke in the offseason because of his weight issues. And that was it. Now, it would have been amazing to see what he could have hit post-1890. Because, in the 1890s, you had the massive boom in offense.
Yes,
and he seems like a sure, 400 guy, like Ed Delahanty and stuff.
Man, I feel bad for asking. That's quite sad. What might have been.
Yeah.
Hey, did Wilson get a lot of accolades for smashing the record, like Ruth Wood for smashing the home run record?
He did not. And apparently... Now, this is what I've read, so it's still weird to me. But apparently the reason is that a mistake in the record books credited Napt-Lajoie with 43 triples in 1903, though he only hit 11 that year. So this was not considered a record to many, I guess. Again, you're looking at me and raising your arms. That's all I know. What? And that's what I've read. Now, Wilson did finish 8th in the MVP voting, and considering that Heine Zimmerman won the friggin' Triple Crown that year and hit .372 and only finished 6th in the MVP. That's a pretty good finish for Wilson.
Yeah, well, firstly, robbed, but yes. How the heck did Zimmerman only finish 6th? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I genuinely do not know, because it wasn't like he was a bad fielder. He could field second, shortstop, third. He was popular with the fans. He had a huge ego, but a lot of guys do. But Larry Doyle won the MVP, and he was a giant, and they did win the pennant.
Okay.
And but still, guys from 5 different teams finished ahead of Zimmerman, who again hit .372 and won the Triple Crown. So I just do not know.
All right, okay, that makes me incredibly irate. Yeah. But are we going to do another impossible to beat or unlikely to beat record today?
We are not, because again we're already passing. Yeah, these episodes get longer and longer. We shall leave you here with these 3 records.
But are we going to continue next time?
I haven't decided yet, because this really is something we can come back to and revisit on and off whenever we like. So maybe not. Maybe something different.
Should people write in about suggestions for records to cover?
They absolutely should. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook or on YouTube, and definitely write in and let us know. And join us on Patreon, as I said, of course. And do not forget to check out me talking about Ted Williams on the Badass of the Week podcast.
All right. Do I get to take us home today?
You get to take us home.
Well, that's it today from me, Berns.
And me, Indy Neidell.
And the Baseball History Time Machine.
Woohoo!
Boop, 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 boop.